We're gonna watch Wendigoon's video. It's about the government cheese tunnels and the got milk conspiracy.
The government is hiding billions of pounds of cheese in hidden caves underneath the United States that it is selling off by manipulating our advertising and education systems to our detriment in order to turn a profit.
Cheese is OP.
And also, welcome to Wendigoon. Today we're going to be looking at a conspiracy theory that dates all the way back to the 1970s.
Someone nerfed
and
the
as
cheese.
mentioned, involves secret government cheese tunnels and manipulation of advertisements and education system for their benefit. While there is some theory crafting here regarding the motive for these actions, most of it's just plain and recorded out in the open, so conspiracy theory is a bit of a stretch. It's mostly just talking about something very weird and shady that the government does. I've known about this story for a long time, but I haven't covered it because I have a rule for myself that if the topic does not involve death in some way, I don't want to cover it. Call it a morbid fascination, but I just think that when something is literally life or death, it just becomes more interesting. No, that doesn't mean someone has to die per se at every topic I cover. Death just has to be on the table. Like,
what the heck? That is such a weird premise. Like, oh, that's a cool topic. Did someone die? No, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to pass on that one. It's not interesting enough.
A disappearance, or like with the Akali Raft video, the researcher thought that death was going to happen and then it didn't happen, or cryptids, like they're capable of killing people. You get the point. But after looking into it a bit further, I think I can confidently associate various deaths with this story. We'll see how it goes.
People are dying from cheese? Okay.
Also, the second time that I have worked milk into a conspiracy theory regarding the government overlooking the well-being of its citizens for a profit while wearing this shirt. And that's an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So hopefully you decide to stick around and see what this rabbit hole's all about.
One
thing I want to mention before we get started is that right now, for a limited time, the Legacy of the Mothman poster is available. A lot of you will probably remember the Legacy of the Wendigo poster that I did a few months ago, and you all were so supportive with that, Invis wanted to keep the cryptid theme going. So here we have Legacy of the Mothman. We have a Mothman presiding over a small town of Point Pleasant during the winter, and I love the design of the Mothman. It's a combination of cute and creepy, and I love the guy with the flashlight, and I love the mountains. I love everything about it. They did a fantastic job on the design. The poster is available in 2 sizes at the link in the description. It will only be available for probably another week, if that, and then they're gone forever. So if you're interested, get in on that while you can. Thank you so much to everyone who has already purchased one, and so much to those who sold out the signed copies in under 5 minutes. I can't even wrap my head around that. It really does mean the world. Thank you all for the support you've shown me. It allows me to do more crazy and weird stuff like this. So if you're interested, check it out in the description. It means a lot. And before I just cause unneeded psychic damage by ruining your perspective of childhood cafeterias and commercials, let's talk about something that can actually help you for a sec. Not that I don't want to hurt you, but we have to keep it balanced. Before I continue with information that's going to have absolutely zero positive effect on your life, let's talk about something that can actually help you, like today's sponsor, Aura. I'm sure we've all used our name, email address, and password across the internet without really thinking about it. And while it can certainly be convenient and fun to throw your personal information onto the web, it's also dangerous. I mean, recently AT&T released that over 73 million people had their information just dropped onto the dark web. And everything they recommend to keep that from happening, like strong passwords, monitoring your account activity, and fraud alerts, are all taken care of by Aura. Aura will expose data brokers that are using your information and send them opt-out requests on your behalf. Anytime you use your info online, there's a chance that some of that information can fall into the hands of telemarketers or scammers or junk mail listers or what have you. And the data brokers that hold that information are legally required to let it go if you ask them to. However, the process can be very tricky and convoluted because that's what keeps the scam going. But now Aura is here to do the hard part for you, because not only will it automatically scan the internet to find if any of your information's in the wrong hands, But with the press of a button, they'll send an opt-out request on your behalf.
I
Not
love
only does this
not
make
being
your information
spammed. I
more
love
secure,
that.
but it also opts you out of things
Not
like
the hot single
telemarketer
moms in your
calls
area.
or junk mail lists, or even monitors your email and passwords to see if they were a part of a data breach, and then gives you advice on what to do from there. In preparation for using Aura in an ad, I ran a check on my email, and lo and behold, some of my information had fallen into the wrong hands.
I love it when the sponsor is
and Aura helped
bleaching
me
my
get that
spam
cleared
inbox.
up. So they've already got my vote. On top of that, the Aura app has a VPN, a password manager, real-time credit and identity theft monitoring, and malware protection. The Aura app even
That
has family
sounds
tools
pretty
like
good.
monitoring screen time or preventing harmful websites from popping up. Aura is pretty much every internet safety tool you could ever need in one app. The internet can be fun and important, especially when you use it to watch a college dropout talk about cheese tunnels. So have Aura put your mind at ease and let them worry about all of the bad so you can get back to what's good. And speaking of good, there's never been a better time to get in on this offer. That's because if you head to the link in the description at aura.com/Wendigoon, you will be able to try Aura for 2 weeks absolutely free. That is right. Get Aura for free for 14 days. Sadly, you're probably going to be amazed by all of the information of yours they find just floating around on the web. But you can get that taken care of and see if Aura is right for you again at aura.com/Wendigoon to get in on this incredible internet defense tool today.
Sponsor.
Thank you all so much for watching the ad. Thank you so much to Aura for sponsoring the video. It really does mean the most. Hope you all check them out. Link is in the description, and we are back to the video. We are going to go ahead and get into it, but as always, thank you for watching. So the reason this conspiracy and cheese caves and all of that exist in the first place is because of dairy. Dairy for the past several centuries has been an incredibly important cornerstone within the world economy.
Cows are extremely overpowered.
Not only are dairy products like milk and cheese bought and sold in massive quantities across the world, but typically the farmers who are responsible for dairy production are also responsible for several other aspects of food production as well. So not only are these farmers important because things like growing crops or raising cattle tends to be the first step in an entire ecosystem of consumption, but because if those farmers don't do well, then the trade routes that move the product doesn't do well, and the marketplaces that sell the product doesn't do well either. Because of this, it's normally in the government's interest to make sure that first level producers like farms are doing okay. And this is the very concern that arose during the Great Depression in 1933. In 1933, FDR—
we gotta take care of our farmers and our cows.
Under his New Deal, created something called the Commodity Credit Corporation, or the CCC. The purpose of this corporation was to monitor and manage various important markets within the United States. Now, the CCC did a lot of stuff around the Depression era that is important historically, but for the sake of our story, we're concerned about its goings-ons in 1948. Initially, the CCC
secretly stood for cows, 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 trust, trust. I'm an expert.
CCC was just a corporation that was set up by the government, and even though it had assistance and oversight from the government, it was technically its own thing. That wasn't until in 1948 when it became a wholly federal entity, meaning that what operates and appears as its own corporation that just has the better interest of farmers in mind, when you go digging, its CEO is the Department of Agriculture. That in itself is nothing new. There's plenty of companies that sort of operate autonomously and are kind of extra arms for the United States government. Well, in 1949, the Department of Agriculture gave the CCC permission to buy excess dairy off of farmers. So why would the government need to do this, right? Well, let's think about it.
Because they love cheese.
At any point there is too much dairy production for the American rate of consumption, so in other words, if farmers are producing in excess of what people are buying, then that means that the price of dairy will go down. If the price of dairy goes down, that means the farmers are being paid less. If someone is being paid less, then that means there is a chance that they are going to go out of business. business. If they don't meet the minimum requirements for operating costs, they could go belly up. Now, in business, this is a thing that happens a lot. People
we don't want to tip the cow over. That's a bad idea.
Who cares, right? Well, while that may be fine for independent companies that are just looking to turn a profit, the government views dairy as a vital corner of the industry, as explained earlier. Because you can look at any point in history and say, sure, the price of dairy is low right now. Who cares if a few farmers go belly up? That's how markets work. But what happens if 5 years from now, there becomes more of a demand for dairy and the price of it goes up, and now you don't have enough people supplying the goods for consumers to buy? And because the government views dairy as vital for American well-being,
yes, we cannot go without our dairy. We cannot go without our cheese. We cannot go without our butter. It's what makes the world go round. We cannot let this happen.
Can't let that happen. So in 1949, the CCC begins to buy up dairy from farmers whenever it's in excess to stabilize the markets, and then whenever the dairy market becomes in scarcity because there's not enough of it, they release some of that dairy back onto the market, keeping the entire dairy industry within a nice median. Something, supply and demand, whatever. This is all well and good for about 25 years, but then things change in 1973. In 1973, the United States ran into an energy crisis. The whole energy crisis is an interesting story in its own right, but the short version is a lot of stuff runs on electricity and oil, and we were having trouble getting both of those. It sure is a good thing we lucked out of some very diplomatic negotiations in the Middle East, am I right, boys? Where the energy crisis relates to our story is, again, because of all those supply chains and markets I mentioned earlier. A side effect of the energy crisis was the price of dairy rose by about 30%. This is getting into the danger zone of people from low-income housing no longer being able to afford dairy, and that not only affects that individual's livelihood and health, but as mentioned earlier, if people aren't buying, the whole market does bad. So the government tries to step in, and as they always do, they just start regulating stuff. Basically, farmers were being told that they need to produce more dairy, but also they can't sell it for as much as the market demands.
Need more milk! Farmers, you must give more milk! Get more cows!
Meaning that for a couple years, the entire nation's dairy industry, and ergo meat, food production, all of it, was almost in the gutter. So
that would be the end of the world as we know it.
1977, Jimmy Carter promised to pour $2 billion into the dairy industry to once again artificially sustain its success over time.
I told you guys, the world revolves around cows. The earth is not flat, it is cow shape. Yes.
Because if it goes, a lot of other stuff goes too. What did that $2 billion go to, you may ask? Well, Jimmy Carter said that any excess dairy that is produced by dairy farms would be bought by the federal government. The Department of Agriculture, through the CCC, had been buying up dairy for years now. That was nothing new. However, before, the amount of excess dairy that was bought up was a strategic amount to make sure that there's enough scarcity to keep the prices up enough to keep the farms running. But now that Jimmy Carter has said any excess dairy will be bought up, well, that means, you can figure it out. Because the farmers who were previously afraid of producing too much dairy, because, if you produce too much, not only are you flooding the market, but also you are raising your cost of production. You are buying more equipment, more farm hands, more cows. Those guys who were afraid of overcommitting are now being told whatever amount of dairy you produce will be sold. So
make it rain milk on the nation for America. Oh, fuck flat earthers, cow earth is the truth. It's in the shape of a milk carton, everyone knows it. The world revolves around cows.
The math. If you're a dairy farmer or someone who's merely considered the concept of maybe one day getting into dairy, how much dairy are you going to make? That's right, as much as you possibly can. And
all of it. All of it. The world will drown in milk.
Yes, while this did fix the rising prices of dairy, it created an entirely new problem. Too much milk. Unless you have...
No, there's no such thing. No.
Hundreds of miles worth of refrigerators, which would be an entirely new energy crisis if you produce that much. There's no way to keep milk for a long period of time. The government...
You must drink it all. Got milk? You got milk? You must consume it all, weakling.
Realize this, but also realize that what you can keep for a long period of time is dehydrated milk, butter, and cheese. Cheese being the easiest to store, the government immediately took all of this excess milk that they were buying and turned it into cheese. However, the amount—
What a horrible thing. Oh darn. Can't keep milk good, guess we'll have to make butter and cheese. Everyone hates mac and cheese. What are we gonna do?
Of dairy and now cheese that the government was taking in was far in excess than any amount they could flood back into the marketplace to stabilize the markets later. So the government just had to keep buying cheese and holding it. Where did they put the cheese, you may ask?
So, does this imply that without the government making a fucky-wucky, as it were, we would not have cheese and butter? You know what I mean? We would not have evolved to mac and cheese?
Well, pretty much anywhere they could find it. They used old warehouses, old bunkers, old food storage facilities. The largest facility and the most famous one—
Open the vault! There must be lots of money in here. No, actually, sir, it's just pounds of cheese.
That this video is titled after is near Kansas City, Missouri, near Interstate 435. There was an underground limestone cave that was naturally cool all year long. So they turned it into a giant cheese storage facility that holds hundreds of millions of pounds worth of cheese.
Wow, this is such a cool cave. It's made of limestone. It stays super cold. And somebody looks at it and goes, ah, yes, nature's freezer. Just as God intended. Wah, wah, wah.
At a 36 degrees Fahrenheit temperature, and yeah, they just leave giant wheels of cheese in there. And hundreds of millions of pounds is not an exaggeration. By most estimates, around 1980, the government had stored about 500 million pounds of cheese that it couldn't do anything with. Not only that, but the incentive to overproduce never went away because the government was still buying up anything in excess. So they didn't just buy a massive lump of dairy and henceforth cheese during the energy crisis, they were still buying it up for years and years.
No one decided to stop the cycle. Someone needs to stop them. We're running out of bunkers. We're running out of caves.
The whole underground cheese cave stuff was kept mostly out of the public eye and just known by people, you know, in the know at like the Department of Agriculture and stuff. That was until December of 1981. It was then on December 2nd of 1981 that John R. Block, Secretary of Agriculture, showed up to the White House with a moldy block of cheese. He held it up to reporters and said that there are 60 million more of these that the government is doing nothing with. This spurred a lot of commotion about government wastefulness from journalists and Americans alike. So later that same—
no, he snitched!
month, President Ronald Reagan said that the cheese would begin to be moved into government welfare programs. Initially, Reagan committed to sending 30 million pounds of the cheese into welfare programs, but eventually like 300 million pounds were sent out. And you may think, oh, well, that's like over half of the cheese supply. Keep in mind, the government is still buying cheese as they are sending it out.
It would have been, but we never stopped buying cheese.
The door. It was incorporated into the Temporary Emergency Food Assistance Program and has forever been known as government cheese. Government cheese is referenced in a lot of American culture.
It's the cheesening.
From songs to stories. Some people look at it fondly, like people remember when they were a kid and would eat, you know, grilled cheese sandwiches with it. Other people view it harshly, that it was a sign of poverty, what have you. Either way, most people don't know that this government cheese program that ended in the 1990s actually came from this entire weird series of market control that I've mentioned up till now.
Cheese is to be consumed by all.
Aside from that, the government continued to buy up dairy from farmers until around 2014 when the program ended because the markets kind of figured themselves out. And you may hear that and think, oh, okay, does that mean that they ended up giving away or running out of all of this excess cheese?
Oh, hell no.
Those same storage facilities that are now managed by the USDA, rather than having 500 million pounds worth of cheese in them, now have somewhere around 1.4 billion pounds
oh my
of cheese
God!
in them. But In spite of that, the government isn't buying it up anymore. At least not to the same degree they were previously. They still buy it up for things like school programs or disaster relief funds, but not to the same degree or the promise of any excess as they were before. So why did the government quit buying it up all of a sudden? Why is 1.4 billion pounds fine when 500 million was a huge issue before? And perhaps most importantly, where did all the cheese go? And that's where we get into the conspiracy. Again, this isn't so much a conspiracy as much as it is a series of conveniences for the federal government. So put yourself in the federal government.
Where are the inventory slots for the cheese, America? Your inventory should be full by now. Where's your stash tab? Where'd you put it?
Issues in the 1980s. The problem is that you are continuing to buy dairy from farmers. Well, you can't quit buying it because now the system has got large enough to a point that if you quit, there could be a market crash that could have repercussions across the entire economy. You can't throw all of your cheese onto the marketplace because that will flood the markets, and what I just said will happen but in a different direction. Effectively, the government has become a whale that is buying so much of the product that if the whale were to disappear, it could crash out the whole market. So the government scratches its chin and says, what if, instead of us continuing to buy it to this degree, what if we push that responsibility onto the American public? What if we stop increasing the amount of cheese bought and instead increase the need to buy cheese? Well, to understand how
make them consume. We mustn't stop buying. They just need to eat more cheese.
That happen, you have to understand something called a commodity checkoff program. Commodity checkoff programs are effectively brandless advertisement and marketing. Sort of. Effectively, you have commodities within the United States, like as mentioned with dairy, are important to not only themselves, but the economy as a whole. So a commodity checkoff program is a system that increases the markets and buyers for a specific commodity. So in other words, you're not advertising a brand of something like meat or eggs, you're just advertising eggs or meat as a concept. The way commodity checkoff programs worked originally is farmers could send in money optionally as a sort of tax, and then the program would use that money to encourage things like the product finding its way into different markets, education around the product, etc. For example, there was a commodity checkoff program around pork. So the program would take money from pig farmers and then use that money to educate people on the benefits of pork, in whatever that means, to pay for pork advertisement, and to lobby with things like restaurants or food chains to put pork on the menu. With the whole idea being that you're helping the market rather than a specific brand or seller. And of course, like the CCC, all of this is run by the USDA. Well, in 1983, the dairy promotion program began. So as mentioned, dairy farmers had the option to pay this Department of Agriculture organization to help sell dairy as a concept rather
I like how they have to pay, those farmers have to pay money
than a specific seller. While this might have done some help for the dairy industry, it wasn't until 1996 during the Clinton administration that the government decided they were going to kick it into overdrive. Then the dairy promotion program was no longer an option and became a mandatory tax for all dairy farmers. In 1995, the tax—
They would do that. They're like, here, you can pay into this if you want, and farmers are like, I don't think I will, and then they're like, okay, it's mandatory now.
Was 15 cents per 100 pounds of dairy sold. Effectively, it's a tax for the benefit—
At least, it says, at least this is the current tax, and I have found no evidence of it being altered since 1995. Fair enough.
Of the whole market. So now the government is taking in a tax from dairy farmers and trying to convert that money into sales for dairy. How do they do that? Well, just do what they always do, silly. Make another shell company. Because in 1995, the government created Dairy Management Incorporated, or I'm sorry, the board underneath the USDA, the Dairy Promotion Program, created an entirely new company that's just hip and cool and loves milk for some reason, called Dairy Management Incorporated.
Milk is cool,
or
bro.
DMI. I jest a little bit. It's not like the government ever tried to hide records that they were running DMI or anything. But most people don't scratch below the surface, and DMI is an excuse to buy things like television advertising, or posters, or celebrity endorsements without the government getting involved.
And I told you guys, milk is about to run the world. Milk is running the world. There's cheese bunkers, there's corporations built around it, there's manipulative advertising.
1993, the
milk
state
is
of
so
California's
OP. There
Milk
is no Nerf
Processing
patch.
Board, which is an independent organization within California made to support local dairy farmers, started an ad campaign called Got Milk. Well, in 95, after the Dairy Management Incorporation, or the DMI, came to, I guess it didn't come to power, but in a dairy sense, it absolutely did come to power. It's like a sovereign ruler over the farms of America. In 1995, Got Milk was bought by the Milk Processor Education Program, which is a program under the
Dictatorship Moo Incorporated, the DMI. Sorry. Back to our scheduled program.
The farms of America. In 1995, Got Milk was bought by the Milk Processor Education Program, which is a program under the Dairy Promotion Program and with DMI and whatnot. Did you ever think it was weird if you grew up like I did and saw posters of Taylor Swift with a milk mustache? Did you ever think it was strange that it wasn't telling you to buy any specific brand of milk?
Oh,
like,
yeah, that's a good point. I never even thought about
that you were supposed to buy. It was just selling you on the idea of milk as a concept.
I don't think I had a developed enough brain in order to think this through. I was simply like, haha, look at that dumb celebrity that somehow left milk on the top of their mouth. That's a grown adult that doesn't know how to use a napkin. I guess they're famous, so I didn't think that critically, but now you really got me scratching my head how weird that is. I can't think of stuff that is like that today. Maybe there is other things like this today, but like, I really can't think of any examples. Because like, every ad I see has to do with a company selling something now, not just like the idea of consuming something as a whole. That's so weird.
And on that same note, did you also think it was weird that schools began to roll out individual milk and chocolate milk cartons? And like every single year I was in school, that was always an option for students to get.
That is so weird. Why have I never thought about it? Cows, milk, OP, okay? We run the entire world. They're still around. I don't know. I have no reason to visit, attend, or be near a public school in any way. But, you know, it's crazy because I remember, at least when I went to school, there was always chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry milk. Always. It's so weird now how, like, normalized that was. I never thought about if, like... It's so weird when you're a kid how you don't have that level of critical thinking that you never think, hey, why is there no, like, orange juice usually or something, right? Why isn't there apple juice or why isn't there water? Like, you would think water would be the cheapest of things, but I think back when I was younger, it was like you would just have to bring your own bottle and have, like, the water fountain or, like, spend extra to get, like, a bottle of water. That's so weird to think about that if you were little that a bottle of water would be more pricey, I think, than... I think it was like 50 cents for milk or something. I don't remember. But that's so weird when you put that together that like, I'd get a water bottle, but you know, milk is cheaper. That's so weird. I never even questioned it. Didn't even like go by my mind at all. Oh yeah, they probably did have like concentrated juices and stuff. My brain just remembers like they never ran out of milk, all right? They might have had the other options, but like you could guarantee there was never a time in my entire, you know, public school education that they ran out of milk. Ever. And I never even thought about it. It would be more weird to see somebody not drinking milk. I imagine being lactose intolerant as a kid at this time, like, or having a milk allergy would have been miserable, actually.
About all of the education and school health class stuff that got injected about how milk strengthens your bones, or it made its way into all of our commercials and kid shows about how milk makes you big and strong. Isn't it convenient that at the exact moment the government decides they want to stop buying milk, we're all of a sudden told that we need to start buying milk? Now, I want to make it very clear. I am not saying any of this to imply or suggest that milk is bad for you or you shouldn't drink it. It is infinitely healthy.
You must consume milk. The milk overlords would be pleased if you consume the milk. Milk for the milk gods. The throne is made of cheese. It is not made of porcelain, it is made of cheese. Consume! Another streamer told us how her school would force her to drink the milk even though she was intolerant. What? Well, wasn't there like this weird thing around then where people would say like, oh, you could get rid of your intolerance if you just drink it more? Or
for a child to be drinking a carton of milk at school than for them to drink a soft drink. It is good for you, it does help with your body's development, but those are all coincidental to the government's actual goal.
I mean, to be fair, it probably is better than if they were drinking, like, soda, but...
Milk was touted as a superfood because the feds needed someone to foot the bill. The fact that it was healthy is just a cool coincidence. It is not—
It's a superfood because it's super good for them if you buy it, Chet. That's what's super about it.
The praxis of getting people to drink milk that is the issue, it's the motivation behind it that should be called into question. And if you want evidence for that, just look at cheese. DMI is most well known for their influential status within the cheese market. So a lot of this money that goes into DMI from dairy farmers, as mentioned earlier, goes to effectively lobby cheese onto the menus of various restaurant and fast food chains. Author Clint Rainey, when writing for Bloomberg, described the DMI as, quote, the Illuminati of cheese, and also said, quote, a secretive government-sponsored entity putting cheese anywhere it can stuff it. DMI began to lobby with a lot of restaurants.
You will consume cheese. Everywhere you look, there will be dairy. Everywhere you look will be cheese. Got milk? No. Milk cartons at schools? Not. You don't want those either? No problem. You want some pizza? All your celebrities will have the dairy mustache. You cannot escape from the cheese. You cannot escape. All right, I just know that for sure. The world is not flat or round. It is in the shape of a milk carton. Yep.
Restaurants to put more cheese into whatever they were selling. In 1995, they worked with Pizza Hut to release the stuffed crust pizza. They've worked with companies like Burger King, Wendy's, and McDonald's to add more cheese to their burgers.
I don't know, man. This part doesn't seem so bad. We got some, cheese-filled crust. We got more cheese on our burgers. I feel like this part is not so bad.
They've repeatedly worked with companies like Taco Bell to find more ways to put cheese into things like quesadillas and quesalupas. Well, you may be asking yourself, okay, but what's in it for the fast food chains, right? Because it's not like someone from DMI is just gonna show up and say, put extra cheese in your food, and they're just gonna do it, right? Well, of course not. As with any of these things, money's exchanged. A large part of the DMI's money goes to advertising for specific companies to ensure that more cheese is sold.
You know what's funny too that I just randomly thought of is like whenever there was some type of celebration at school, it was always pizzas.
2009 article from the Daily Herd, a farmer's newsletter, talks about how cool it is that the DMI has committed to paying Domino's $12 million for advertisement in the next 2 years. Also off of that, it's now not so surprising why the government bailed out Domino's after the 2010 recession. And this happens with every company they work with.
Save the pizza! We cannot let them go down! I told you guys, the world is powered by dairy. The most OP thing on earth is cows and dairy. It's inescapable. Damn the government for letting Domino's live. Yeah, the pizza parties. The pizza parties at school, man. I can't ever look at them the same. Government giving us stuffed crust pizza might be the most benevolent thing they've ever done. More like it was a very tasty Band-Aid they put on the whole situation. I'd say that it's not benevolent. I would just say it's a very tasty Band-Aid. Does this mean the milkman is a Fed now? Oh, man.
Even though it's through the DMI, which is its own incorporation, it is the government paying out businesses to put more cheese on the menu through advertisement cost or some kind of kickback. And before even getting into the health ethics of that, there's already ethics on the taxation principle of that. Because like I mentioned, the dairy promotion program is not optional. It is a mandatory tax that farmers have to pay. So any farmer producing dairy has to produce the tax money for the dairy they produce, and then guess what companies, chains like McDonald's and Taco Bell, buy off of? They're not buying off of the small upstart or family-owned farm, they're buying off of the super corporations, the ones that have thousands and tens of thousands of cattle and have been doing it for the past 50 years.
Makes sense.
So effectively, smaller dairy companies are having to pay a tax to ensure that their competition stays on top.
That's pretty stinky. Rip.
Only that, but where you can kind of look the other way when it comes to milk, because sure, in large quantities, milk can be bad for you. It's still a healthier option for kids and anyone to be drinking over something like soda, right? But you cannot say the same thing about cheese. Cheese causes high cholesterol, cheese is linked to obesity, especially in the extreme volumes we consume it nowadays.
Yeah. The healthiest children, it turns out, do not eat Domino's pizza every day.
1970s, the average American consumed about 7 to 8 pounds of cheese per year.
Oh my
which, when you break that up as 3 meals over 365 days, isn't that much. Compare that to the modern age, where it's estimated that the average American...
I guess it's not that much, but it sounds like a lot when you put it all together, okay?
Consumes about 41 pounds of cheese per year, or as
Never mind, this is so much of a bigger... Never mind, That's a huge increase of cheese consumption.
Country, 13.5 billion pounds of cheese. And while that is an absurdly high number, that is still per capita lower compared to countries like Italy or France.
No
the rate
way.
Americans buy dairy from the 1980s to now has actually fallen to about half, but that doesn't matter because our rate of consuming cheese has more than quadrupled. And Dairy Management Inc., the company that is not the government but also definitely is the government, had a large hand in that.
So how do these other countries still beat us in cheese consumption and don't even have this deep underground, and cheesening of the market? How are they still eating more cheese than us just casually? Wait, what? How?
Encouraging pizza chains to put more cheese on their pizza, and also every menu at any fast food chain to add cheese
the
in some different way and
uncheesening.
name all their foods cheesy or with cheese.
Needs
and
more cheese.
Make schools roll out pizza parties every week to sell more cheese. Remember?
I just mentioned that. I'm glad he brought it up because I was like, I can't stop thinking about the pizza parties. I'm French. I was born into it, molded by it. The French are molded by the cheese. I see. Is cheese considered a controlled substance? Oh my god.
Remember all those that you just thought were fun and had no underlying motive? Sorry. Remember how at the beginning of this video 500 million pounds of cheese was a problem, and now those same facilities have 1.4 to 1.5 billion pounds of cheese in them and it's not a problem? Well, that's because about 300 million pounds of that is actual government property used for disaster, school efforts, whatever.
Gotcha.
The other 1.2 billion pounds is cheese that is stored by the USDA for private companies. Meaning that what was once a
So we got private companies that are hoarding over cheese like dragons do over gold. That is truly something.
Problem of, oh, what are we going to do with all this cheese? We can't expect people to eat it, is now just a blip on the radar. 1.4 billion pounds of cheese is nothing compared to the 13.5 billion we consume every year. And of course, the hypocrisy for that lies on the USDA, the same organization that claims so much to be concerned with American health and to make sure Americans are eating what they're supposed to, have a company that makes sure we get cheese in everything we eat. They'll say things like eat cheese in moderation and be careful with your consumption while creating a 7-cheese pizza with stuffed crust. The fact of the matter is,
be healthy. Don't, watch your calories. Don't, do everything in moderation. Here's your 7-cheese layered pizza with a cheese crust in it.
Is sure, maybe when it doesn't matter, they're kind of concerned about our health, but not when there's a profit to be made. And the government, instead of changing regulations or the way they handle products and consumers, simply foots the bill over to us and tells us to do what they always tell us. Just buy more. So congratulations, the country's been psyoped into eating cheese. What do we do now? Well, the solution is what the solution is anytime there's a government issue. It goes back to you, the individual. Don't eat fast food, or if you do eat it, do it in moderation and try to stay away from things that aren't healthy for you. And while sure, the health of oneself always falls back on the person, that's not the motto that organizations like the USDA or the government as a whole are taking. They're supposed to have our best interest in mind. mind. But in praxis, that best interest always exists as long as there's no money to be made. It's easy for us to look at the circumstance and argue personal responsibility and to just stay away from it, but fast food is cheap and easy, and the government knows that, so they know they will always have a population of those in poverty or those who are uneducated that they can throw their product onto. Because who cares if American obesity is at an all-time high as long as we don't have to worry about the whole cheese thing. And also, blah, 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 high cholesterol obesity leads to heart attacks, stroke, death, and that is how I'm working death into this video. And at the end of the day, this isn't anything that I think is worth grabbing pitchforks over, right? The government had to hold up a part of the economy, and they didn't want to do it anymore because they needed the money for some other frivolous purpose. So they use kind of shady advertisement tactics, especially shady when it comes to kids,
Death by cheese doesn't sound so bad.
Onto us. But again, we can simply choose to not participate in the cheesy gordita crunch, although we may dabble from time to time.
We may dabble.
And it's not like things like drinking milk are that harmful, right? But what I am saying is if the government's willing to fix their mistakes or solve their problems through us by changing the education around certain products or reframing narratives regarding how we're supposed to consume certain products or using celebrities or other tools at their disposal to convince us that something is in our best interests, if they're willing to change what is considered the best interest, if they're willing to set up shell companies, if they're willing to use tax dollars, if they're willing to change the way a core part of the economy functions over milk, then what do you think they're willing to do about everything else? All of that to say, remember kids, the next time somebody tells you the government wouldn't do that, you can figure out the rest. And if you think this entire video is crazy, if you think this is some whack brain conspiracy that doesn't make any sense and I'm insane and very weird, which you're definitely right about at least one of those things, I still want to say thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video.
It was good.
As a lot of you probably know from like the Creepcast stuff or the red thread that I've talked about lately, I got my wisdom teeth removed a couple weeks ago and my face still kind of hurts. Oof. So when I was like hyped up on the pain medication, I was just like, I had a laptop in bed reading about milk. So that's my recovery process. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was interesting for you.
I really liked this video. It was very good. It was a very good video.
This video was supposed to come out sooner than I originally thought, but again, face swollen and whatnot. So I finally feel able to sit down and record a video. And this was a topic that kept having rabbit holes. Like I dig and I figure out stuff about like the Got Milk campaign, and then there's a mention of DMI, and I'm like, what's DMI? And then that turns into the whole cheese thing, and that's where I found my connection to death. Cheese has absolutely killed several thousand Americans, no question about it. Yeah, this is just a story that I thought was interesting.
You could bury a man in cheese.
I thought it was a good example of the government being kind of
spooky. You could murder a man underneath pounds of cheese. We have enough of it.
Strange off-topic video also about milk, which is now my second one of, which it's weird that it happened twice. But thank you all for sticking around for this one. It means a lot. There's Creepcast and Red Thread on the way, Weird Bible. Once a month as always. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
They have enough to make like an entire cheese lake
poster
and
is
swim
available
in
at the link in the description. It will be here for a very limited amount of time, like less than a week, and then it's gone for good. So get in on that in the description while you can.
You can make an entire water park and fill it with cheese.
It means the most.
And there would still be tons left over.
There will be some new, very cool announcements. There should be an announcement very soon regarding the Stalker film, which I know a lot of you guys have been asking about.
Who needs prisons when you can drown them in cheese?
The people who donated, like they know through the Kickstarter and everything.
Never mind. Maybe we do that for therapy instead of punishment.
Announcement about that on the way very soon. Thank you all for your support with that. I believe that should do it for now. But I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!
That was lovely. Moo-ah, 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 moo-ah.